was asked this week about getting 3D prints to stick to the print bed. And to be honest, in the very early days of 3D printing, I did have trouble printing larger prints and getting them to stick, but I haven't really had that problem anymore. And I was just going to share a few things that I do to make them print. Obviously, there's loads of videos out there on YouTube about the best methods of getting stuff to stick to the heated bed, especially ABS, because ABS, as everyone knows, does suffer with warping and tends to start to lift. And once it starts to lift off the bed, it can pop off or snag on the print, and we can get spaghetti in the printer. So a few things that I would recommend are, we do need a surface on these metal beds and probably the glass beds if you're doing ABS. The one that people recommend is Kapton tape. Here's some Kapton tape. Don't know much about the company. It is the cheapest Chinese Kapton tape I could get hold of, because some of it can be quite expensive. Can be quite difficult to cut as well, so it's a bit tough. But essentially you've got to cut these pieces off and then maybe slice my fingers off there. We're going to lay them on the bed and get a nice flat surface. We don't want to overlap the Kapton, because the print head, if it's very close to the bed, can actually catch on the overlap and end up tearing the Kapton up. Now, the Kapton's not a permanent finish, as I'm sure you're aware. We will have to replace this every now and again. Now, sometimes I can get maybe 30 or 40 prints out of it. If it starts breaking in certain places, I can reposition small prints. But if I want a nice finish on the base of my model, I will typically replace the Kapton with new Kapton. So this is what I'm about to do now. I do have another surface finish that I like to do, but I do like to stick Kapton down first. I'll introduce that. It's a standard Polly Pocket, not Polly Pocket, a laminating pouch. So obviously you put your A4 work in the pouch, run it through a laminator, the heat kind of melts this glue and sticks it together. Now what I've actually found is if you pull this laminating pouch apart into two separate sheets, that actually will stick down to the bed when it's hot and make a very nice print surface. It's quite easy to peel off when the bed is hot. If it's cold, it will be stuck quite fast, but when it gets warmed, it will peel off again and still have quite a sticky property to it. The problem with this is it does leave a residue on the build bed. So I do like to put a layer of Kapton down first and then stick this on top. And what I'll actually find is if it's hot, I can peel this off, leave the Kapton on, and put another layer down, ready for building again. And I find that this stuff works pretty well with PLA, ABS, and all the other PEGT and the PTU that I've got, and the Ninja Flex, and the wood filament, and all the other filaments. It works pretty well. So how do we get the Kapton on? It can be a bit tricky. One of the things I wouldn't recommend doing is cutting this, sticking it down, trying to layer it up. It's a bit of a pain. I like to employ one of the tricks that I developed or learnt when I was attempting to tint a camper van window, and that is to actually wet the surface first. This surface here is cold at the moment. Wouldn't recommend it while it's hot. Certain layers go down better when it's hot, certain layers go down better when it's cold. So I'm going to do a cold job here. Here I have some generic spray. It's not what was in the container, it's actually just water in there now. What I'm going to do is spray the water on. There might be a bit of soap still in there from leftover. I didn't thoroughly clean it out. And then what I'm going to do is take my piece of Kapton, pre-cut it, and then lay it down pretty close and accurate as I can. And then actually I can float it around on that water, and I can use well, my fingers or anything to actually get all those little bubbles out. Usually getting the first bit down is relatively easy, even without a wet bed. But yeah, this getting them up close to each other without them overlapping is quite difficult, because the tape does actually bend and twist slightly. But like this, I can literally just lay it out, work those air bubbles out. You see how it just kind of slides about on the surface there. That's probably close enough. Just check there's no overlaps. By wetting the surface very lightly, obviously be careful because there's electronics around here, it's just a very light spraying. It's reduced the stress levels from what I found very stressful to now the most stressful part of the job is actually cutting the tape. I find the tape doesn't cut very easily. See how I can just reposition that now. Okay, perfect. Next thing to do is get something to squeegee a little bit of that liquid out of there. Just going to use this really old naff sponge here. And you'll see that moisture coming to the edge and the sponge is picking it up. Be careful now, because if I press too hard they will slide off. See how that one actually slid? It's not a problem. If I grab it I can just slide it back into place. Perfect. Let's hold it down there and squeeze it that way. Hold it up there and squeeze it that way. And then the last thing I'm going to do now is turn the heat bed on, warm this up, and all the rest of that moisture should escape from under that Kapton. Okay, if it does lift because of the moisture driving out, don't worry, you can just go back to the middle of these, give them a rub, and that will help that moisture drive out. You can probably see it steaming there. And just rub that moisture up to the edge, and once it gets up there, it should escape very easily. Now that it's all nicely warmed up, we could actually stick one of these laminate pouches on, and you'll see how it pretty much the glue melts straight away, and it's actually going to stick to the surface there. That actually gives quite a nice finish. It also gives quite a nice surface finish to the item you're printing. Any kind of lines or marks that the tape might leave behind this stops. So if I'm using the laminating pouch, I can get away with leaving the Kapton for much longer. This will, it's much more robust actually, and much more resistant to damage, piercing and scraping. Once you're happy, you've got a nice flat surface down, I'm going to do a quick print straight onto the Kapton tape, just to see if I can demo something lifting. Put together a very simple flat rectangle here. This should be a large enough surface area to get it to lift if it's going to lift. Post that out to a card. Oh, I've got a whole deck of 8080 Walker parts there. Okay, that's ready to go. As you can see, it's lifted in this corner here, and it came off pretty easily, as you see. As mentioned, I've tried all sorts of things to get these things to stick down nice and flat. Pritt stick is one thing, doesn't really work. Hairspray is something that people recommend, doesn't really work. I've tried using just acetone, be careful with that. Acetone and ABS mix, or slurry as they call it. Paint that on with a paintbrush. Yeah, it's not bad, it works okay, but it is a bit messy. The product I really like is this sort of clear seal stuff. Now this is a Rust-Oleum, but in no way is it sponsoring me in any form. It's just works really well. I believe it's polyurethane or some sort of liquid plastic like that. No, couldn't find out what it is easily on the camera. So I just put a very, very small amount, like a dusting. There we go. Probably best to do this in a well ventilated area with the window open or some vents on. Now what I will do is preheat the bed, and that will actually help this stuff dry and bake it on the bed. And now we can see that this one is finished. There is a really tiny bit of lift on the corners. So you can see it compared to the other one that came off, it's really quite well stuck. Let's see whether it will come off easily. This one's not coming off so easily, so I'll have to try and slide that one off. Yeah, it's actually stuck better than it usually does. Now, one thing to note, that there we go, I damaged that wasn't so good, but so having a look at this, we can see that this is the one that's been printed on the sprayed bed using the clear seal, and we've got really nice flat surface there. I can actually use this spatula to demonstrate how flat that is. Really quite nice. And we'll have a look at the one that was done before just on the Kapton, and we can see that there is significant warping on one edge there on that corner, and also that way is not so bad. But and actually when we offer these two together, we'll see the one that was done directly onto Kapton is pretty unflat. You can see there's quite a big gap around there. Okay, we can compare that to its top surface, which is almost flat. You can see there's a small amount of curl on this one that's been printed second, but obviously much better job.